When I first met Lena, she had this confidence that lit up every room, the kind that made people stop mid-con conversation just to watch her laugh. She was bold, outspoken, and always surrounded by friends, both men and women. I admired that about her. She made life exciting. When we started dating, I never questioned her social nature because I believed trust was the foundation of love. But after marriage, I noticed something shift. Her friends weren't just casual anymore. They were constant. Late-night texts, private lunches, and inside jokes I wasn't a part of became her new normal. At first, I tried to ignore the knot in my chest, telling myself not to be controlling, that she just needed space. But space, when abused, turns into distance. And soon, she was emotionally miles away. It started subtly. A phone face down on the table, her giggles in another room, her messages deleted before I could even notice them. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd snap, "Don't you trust me?" It wasn't the words that hurt. It was how easily she flipped guilt onto me, like I was the problem for caring. I started spending more time at work just to avoid the tension at home. She seemed happier that way. Free, unbothered. I realized that sometimes people don't want freedom from control. They want freedom from accountability. Then came that one night. She came home past midnight, the scent of men's cologne lingering faintly on her jacket. When I looked at her, she smiled like nothing was wrong. "Who are you with?" I asked softly. She rolled her eyes and said, "Just friends." "You seriously need to stop acting jealous, Mark." Her tone wasn't defensive. It was mocking. That was the first time I felt something snap inside me. Not anger, not heartbreak, just silence. A deep, empty calm that told me this woman wasn't the one who'd once looked at me with love. A few days later, the argument finally exploded. She was pacing across the bedroom, throwing clothes into a suitcase, shouting, "You're suffocating me. You need to accept my male friends or I'm leaving." Her words echoed like a challenge, not a cry. She wanted me to beg. I could see it in her eyes. She expected tears, a plea, a desperate, "Don't go." But all I did was lean against the wall, arms crossed, watching her tantrum with the composure of a man who had already let go. When she looked up at me for a reaction, I simply smiled and said, "Perfect. I'll call you a taxi." The sound of my voice shattered her act completely. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled, and the suitcase slipped from her grip, hitting the floor with a dull thud. She stared at me, stunned, as if the world had tilted off its axis. "You're serious?" she whispered. I nodded completely. "You've been threatening to leave for months. I figured I'd finally help you follow through." For the first time, she was speechless. No snarky comebacks, no manipulative tears, just a woman realizing that the man she thought would never stop loving her already had. The silence that followed was heavy. She sank onto the edge of the bed, eyes wide, voice trembling, "You don't even care anymore." I sighed and said quietly, "I did more than you'll ever understand. But love without respect is just slow self-destruction. I loved you enough to give you trust. You loved me just enough to test it." She looked down at her hands, shaking like she didn't recognize herself anymore. For years she held the power, the teasing, the manipulation, the guilt-tripping. But at that moment, all of it crumbled. She realized what true indifference feels like. When someone stops fighting, not because they're weak, but because they finally had enough. That night, she didn't leave. She stayed in the guest room crying softly. I didn't comfort her. For years, I'd been the one to fix everything. This time, I let silence do the talking. In the morning, she tried to act normal, making coffee like nothing happened. I walked in, grabbed my mug, and said, "You don't need to pretend. You said you were leaving. I won't stop you." She broke down right there, whispering, "I didn't mean it." I looked at her for a long moment and said, "You meant every word. You just didn't expect me to believe you." Weeks passed. She tried to patch things up, cooking dinners, leaving notes, acting affectionate. But once a person loses your respect, every gesture feels hollow. I was polite but distant. One evening, she asked if we could start fresh. I told her, "You can't restart a story after burning the first chapter." That night, she didn't argue, she just cried. I think she finally understood what real consequences feel like. Eventually, she left. Quietly. No drama this time. No shouting, no suitcases thrown in anger. She just walked away, leaving her key on the counter. I didn't stop her because some goodbyes don't need words, just peace. For months, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. My house felt lighter, quieter, cleaner, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Months later, I heard she tried reconnecting with those same male friends. They didn't want her around anymore. Turns out her charm only worked when she had a husband to disrespect. Life has a way of teaching people lessons that love never could. One night, she called me. Her voice was small, fragile. "Mark, do you hate me?" I smiled faintly and said, "No, Lena, I just finally love myself more." Then I ended the call peacefully, permanently, and without regret.